Hi, my name is Dominic Cardelli, and I am a music producer, musician, and digital artist based out of Minnesota. And I like to go over this plugin today. Mostly we're going to be going over how to analyze sound. And I thought a great tool to kind of look at analyzing sound is Melda's MMultiAnalyzer. This is a pretty powerful tool, especially if you're trying to figure out where your mix is getting pretty muddy, and in places where and there's a lot of other things it can do too. So we're gonna go over analyzing sound and different properties of sound within the lens of this particular tool. Now you can apply this lesson to other tools, other plugins you might have, but in particular today we're going to be going over this particular plugin. So if you have, right now we're looking at two instruments combined. There are a couple of the stock instruments that come with Ableton, Ahab bass and blowout bass. And if I take this off, you can kind of see now the blowout bass is gone now because it has this note. I've just held it continuously. And so right now, even though we're looking at both of them, the only note that's still being played is the Ahab bass. And that's just the way that the instruments are set up here. Okay, so I'm going to release that note, and you're going to see that how this waveform gradually kind of disappears. And so those last little frequencies that you're hearing are right around 200 hertz. Okay, and that's a G3, if you're familiar with piano notes and stuff. Okay, so G3. So let me actually play a G3 on the piano, which is going to be, let's see, G1, G2. Make sure I got that right here. Okay, let's make sure. Oh, no, I played a G2, my mistake. Let me play a G3. Okay, that's going to be a G3. Okay, let's go back to our analysis. G3, G4. So we're seeing multiple harmonics from G3 now up to G4, G5, and you would expect that. G3, G4. Now, interestingly enough, the blowout bass kind of does a similar property there, but even much more extreme. There's a G2 again, or G1. And now you're seeing this fundamental frequency, but it's really kind of interestingly for the Ahab bass. Let's just look at the blowout bass. That blowout bass is much more dense on the G2. Now if you combine them, ooh, that was cool. So now you can kind of see as you examine the properties of sound and how it moves, you can kind of see, okay, well, what could kind of sound cool with this? So I don't think that too much of that heavy strength is a great sound for this instrument, or these combined instruments, if you will, for this multi-instrument. But what I do think sounds kind of cool is maybe holding this kind of as like a pad, getting that strong, right? That strong kind of. And so as we see that wave there, I really like to hold it, and I think the maximal amount of time is around 3 seconds for this. Now what I'm noticing here is that the instrument does not seem to be polyphonic, meaning I can't really play chords. I can do lots of short stuff like that, but I'm not able to play chords with these. So I would have to either figure out a way to make them polyphonic, or just deal with the fact that they're one note at a time type instruments. Now let's move on from the sonogram here, and let's look at some collisions. So this bar here is the collisions. I'm gonna change the color of this. Okay, the blowout bass for some reason is still in black there. What's going on? Just green. Okay, there we go. So it's showing the collisions here now. And that's kind of down here where these two instruments are clashing. Okay? And then you can kind of see, well, the sonogram, from what we remember before, the blow-up bass had that higher end, right? So you're seeing that down here around 5 to 20K. So you've got that nice higher end of that bass. And then you kind of got this combined thing. So let's solo out the Ahab bass track right now. So that's where you're getting that really heavy low end from that 20 hertz to around 2000 hertz, right? In that really heavy, that kind of like deep, sort of wide width to it. It's really kind of almost pulsating. Now here we're gonna look at, let's freeze this. How do I freeze this? Nope. I did it a second ago. Oh, I did it on a different instrument. Let's freeze it on. Let's pull up our oscilloscope here. Okay, we're gonna bypass it and we're freezing it. This one is just looking at the Ahab bass. Now at this oscilloscope, we're basically detecting amplitude over time and kind of what that waveform looks like at a frozen snapshot. Freeze it there, freeze it there, freeze it there, freeze it there. Well, what is kind of the purpose of this, you might ask? Well, the purpose is to detect how the amplitude changes across time affect the tone and the nature of the instrument. So if you were to build a particular waveform using, you know, sound synthesis or sound design, and you created the wave to be sort of like sparky here, but then maybe depth, maybe kind of like a mix between a square, and then you drew in some triangles, and then maybe a half sine right there, and then you looked at that through the oscilloscope, you could note the changes, and then you could also draw in amplitudes too, right? So you could draw in like huge amplitude here, and then maybe something like smaller, like a small triangle, and then maybe a larger triangle, and you can kind of have fun playing with that from a sound design perspective. Okay, so let's go over to, let's go back to our MMultiAnalyzer. So then this oscilloscope is looking at, well, what is the sound design from two instruments being put together, okay, in these moments of time? And how does that look? So you can kind of see, well, okay, so this is the Ahab bass right there, and that's the blow-up bass. These two kind of do complement each other pretty well, which is pretty great since I just randomly picked two instruments. And so that's kind of a fun thing, I think, to look at. And so, again, with this collisions here with the MMultiAnalyzer, it really helps to see, well, where are they clashing? Based on the entire song, and as I go up, it kind of clashes less and less. Just by the way that these different instruments are designed. Okay, so there's a clash at around, I think it's like A5 or A6. And we'll go back down. Much bigger clash down here in those lower frequencies. So you could do a couple things with that. I mean, you could just accept the fact that you have collisions, or you could go through the blow-up bass and maybe apply some EQ to filter out some of those lower frequencies, because you're thinking, well, I really just kind of like the high end of the blow-up bass. I don't necessarily need that collision, but honestly, at the end of the day, if it sounds worse when you take those out, just leave it in, right? So yeah, that is kind of my nutshell sound properties of sound. Oh, we haven't looked at the spectrum yet. Let's look at that. Kind of the same thing as the sonogram, just looking at it in a different way here. You can put in areas, right? And that's helpful. Or the keyboard. I mean, that's pretty cool too. That's great if you're trying to analyze something on the drums, which I might do later today now. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this video and that you've learned something from it for analyzing sound and different properties of sound. And I wish you well.